In the early 90s, Marvel Comics featured a Spider-Man story arc where Spider-Man teams up with Venom, Black Cat, Captain America, and several other heroes to tackle Carnage and a cadre of other villains. That story arc was called the Dark Tower series. Okay. The actual story was Maximum Carnage. Now, it was obvious that the head honchos at Marvel had a lot of high hopes about this series. Why do I say that? Well, they published a 14-part story! Well, all kidding aside, there was actually a lot of merchandise just for this one storyline. You know, there was Maximum Carnage the video game, there were Maximum Carnage action figures, and let's not forget my personal favorite, Maximum Carnage the Flamethrower. But, you know, you can tell this was going to be a big story, because just look at the first issue of the story. It's not Maximum Carnage Part 1, it's Maximum Carnage Begins Here. But anyway, despite Marvel's best hopes, this was not a well-received series. However, I'm going to give my little defense of Maximum Carnage.
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Spins a web in his ass, catches thieves to that last. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man. Is he strong? Listen, bug. He's got radioactive blood. Can he swing from the...
But before we begin, I have a little confession to make. I actually quite liked Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. But aside from that, I might as well point out that I'm also missing a couple of issues of the series. 3 to be precise, but I really don't think there's anything in those 3 issues that's gonna vehemently sway my opinion, so let's keep going. Now, the basic gist of the story is that Carnage escapes from a high-security mental asylum, where he teams up with Shriek, a girl with a very powerful scream, and a series of other villains, including Doppelganger, a Spider-Man clone. Don't worry, it doesn't go into that territory. Carnage and his family, as he likes to call it, go on a rampage throughout New York, and it's up to Spider-Man to form a team of fellow heroes to bust Carnage and his little family. And there we have the biggest criticism of this little series, that it's just 14 parts of heroes chasing villains. Now, I really hate to be one of those people, but I kind of wonder how many people who hate it for that reason have actually, you know, read it. I mean, okay, if you've read it and you hate it for other reasons, that's fine. But I really don't think hating it because it's 14 parts is a legitimate excuse, because, well, there are actually a surprising amount of twists and turns. Like, for example, it's not just Carnage and his family, the entire city of New York's going insane. And it's kind of like, you know, how do you get an entire city under control? I hate to also make this comparison, but the story also reminds me a little of The Dark Knight, in the sense that it's about a madman who's basically causing all this trouble for his own entertainment, and people are wondering, our heroes, Spider-Man, specifically Spider-Man and Venom, they're wondering what they have to do to bring this man under control. You know, Venom, he thinks the ends justify the means, that he can just kill Carnage. Spider-Man, not so much. And, you know, I have to admit, this story, it has some really good action, and that's one of the reasons I read these comics. You know, there's good action. The story doesn't pull its punches. There are some pretty intense scenes. Though, having said that, there are some things I don't like about this. I mean, you know, I am defending this, but they really muddled things up. While I said that the ending was... Well, I said that the 14-part length wasn't a good reason to hate this, I have to admit that by the end of the comic, I it kind of felt like they were just finding new ways to say the same thing. Plus, I won't spoil anything for those of you who haven't read this, but the way they beat one of the villains is quite lame. Anybody who's read this, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. I'm sure it's turned a lot of people off from this. There are also some really dumb moments in this comic, like, let me read a little passage for you. When Venom and during the climatic battle, Spider-Man actually comments, "You know all about the sick childhood Cassidy endured, the abuse he suffered? Is it any wonder he turned out like he did? He never had a chance. In his own fashion, he just may be the most innocent of all." Forget about it. The sooner we get through this, the sooner we end this. But, in conclusion, a lot of dumb moments, but overall, I think it's a good read. And I have to admit that despite its 14-part length, it goes by pretty quickly. So if you haven't read it, give it a shot and see for yourself.